friends, our long wait is over. The Acolyte is here, and we on Star Wars Generations podcast are here to talk to you about it with myself and Alex Corman. Alex, General Kenobi, how are we feeling about this new show?
I will say that I was actually talking to a friend the other day that this is the most blind I'd ever gotten into a Star Wars anything. Like I usually like eat up all of the non-spoiler reviews and trailers, and I went in here having just seen the initial trailer, and I was like really pleasantly surprised. I mean, I felt gripped through both episodes. They were over. I was like, wait, there's no way that like 30 minutes passed that quickly.
Yeah.
I think that the suspense is definitely there. There's like we were promised a kind of a mysterious Sith tale, and that's definitely present. I think that so far, is it Amandla? How do you pronounce it? Do you know Amandla?
I think it's Amandla, the name of the
Amandla.
actress.
Yes, Amandla Stenberg. I think it's been fantastic, especially playing like two characters.
Yep.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's a breath of fresh air. It's new. It's different. I don't feel like I'm watching a remake or like, anyone's pandering to any fan service. Like it just felt really new, and that was really fun for me.
Yeah, I feel very much the same. Welcome to Team Don't Get Too Into Spoilers and Trailers Land. And it's funny because I've read all the High Republic books, which I know this is coming at the end of that time. And so there were a couple of references that I definitely caught that we'll go over in a later podcast. But even so, I felt like I had so little idea of what was going to happen, and I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a couple of things that surprised me. Big spoilers, by the way. If you don't want to be spoiled for the show, this is definitely the time to check out. Spoilers coming in 3, 2, 1. I did not expect them to make a big deal of Carrie-Anne Moss and then kill her off in the first 10 minutes.
That was crazy to me. Because, like, I had the same thought. Because, like, that's all they show her in the trailer so heavily, and they've talked her up, and then she's dead 5 minutes into the show. I was like, are you joking?
I wonder if we're going to see more of her. But
like flashbacks?
Yeah, like flashbacks or something. It would be really bold, though, to have done that. And at first I was angry, but then I just got so caught up in the rest of the story. And agreed. I think Steinberg is doing an amazing job. I haven't seen her in much. The only thing I've ever seen her in was she was Rue in the Hunger Games, which was fantastic.
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, that's her. That's
cool.
And the other big casting you might recognize is, do you recognize the guy who's playing the person who sells poison to Maya?
He looked familiar, but I couldn't put a finger on him.
That's Jason from The Good Place.
See, I don't watch The Good Place, but he still looked familiar to me. Sure, just seen him online, but I mean, it's him. And then of course, Lee Jung,
Filipino surfer, like himbo boy.
Oh my god!
Like beautiful and thoughtful and caring, as dumb as a box of rocks, and like so this his part is so different, and I'm in so far. I'm curious about the mysteries. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that just what we're talking about the actors. I just wanted one more shout out to Lee Jung Jae, who plays Master Soul from Squid Games. I think he is doing absolutely fantastic as well. I mean, like there is no, I know there have been complaints in past Star Wars projects about like acting. I thought every bit of acting was very strong, very convincing, and very fun.
Agreed.
Even like the youngling, I can't remember her name, but the Padawan who's running around with them is really fun. Jackie. Yep.
Jackie and shirtless Yord, who has already generated quite a good deal of thirst. The Yord Horde that I am happy to be a member of, and I imagine Erin is going to become a member of, but we'll have to discuss it with her when she next comes on. Yeah, it's just, and what I appreciate is that already it feels like I know who these characters are. I know what's going on, and they feel so rich. Like, Yord kind of walks right in and uses some mind control to like read someone's mind in a way that I think like a lot of people are like, no, wait, that's not what the Jedi are supposed to do. And I think your reaction is supposed to be like, yeah, Exactly. Like, these are not perfect cookie cutter Jedi. These are real people with real struggles about their emotions. And
Hmm.
um, I'm just really here for it.
Yeah, I mean, they even made a point to like, the Jackie pointed out, Professor Soul. She was like, that kind of attachment or that kind of nostalgia is not like recommended. And like the other Jedi Master, who was only on screen briefly, the one who's all green, she like even said to Master Soul, like, I don't know if you were still so attached to your Padawan. Like, it's like attachment might be frowned upon, but it's like not seen as completely taboo. Like it's like understood and like
Mm-hmm.
recognized. And I also think it was very cool that like it feels like the story will run through both the character of May and Osha, and so you're kind of seeing the Jedi and the Sith acolyte, whatever you want to call them at this point. But
Mm-hmm.
seeing the Jedi Order at its height, like there's Jedi temples all over the galaxy. There's different types of Jedi. I mean, like this Wookiee Jedi, like in the Jedi we know, like you're supposed to like go back to the temple unless you're on a mission. Like it's like very like
Mm-hmm.
Coruscant based, and like this Wookiee is just like fucked off to some random like wooded world, and that one master's been meditating for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like it's super cool. Like you said, it feels very rich, and like I don't feel like I think it was a breath of fresh air because it's these characters we don't know, but I immediately felt like I do know them and I feel comfortable with them and I like am engaged with them, which I think is very hard to do like off the bat. I don't think I felt completely that way with a character since like maybe Din in Mando, like feeling like connected pretty
Mm-hmm.
early on. Like that was just it's really well done.
Yeah. I think that's very true. I'm glad you brought up Master Torben because he's the one who was in that kind of like meditative force field for 10 years.
Hmm.
And I'm so curious about that because I think that a lot of times when we think of a Jedi withholding their emotions, it's often these very external ones. It's love, it's attachment, it's desire, it's possession and jealousy. And then the things that can lead to if people harm the folks that you care about, rage and anger and revenge and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't heard about guilt. We haven't
Mm.
heard about like self-doubt. And we only got that little picture of it, but clearly that was a part of what was happening with Torben. And the fact that all she had to do was show up and offer him this poison and say, like, this is what you should do, and he did it. Um,
Without
I, I
hesitation.
without any hesitation. And
Yeah.
we've seen Jedi sacrifice themselves for others. Like that's the very first Jedi death we ever see with Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't ever remember a Jedi just sort of, I mean, basically unaliving themselves. Literally, that's
Yeah.
what they do.
Yep. And it's interesting because he says that I can't remember the exact quote I wish I'd written down, but he says something along the lines of like we tried our best, we thought what we were doing is right. I think is what he said. Like we really believe what we were doing is right, but like he's been waiting for her, and like he was like I'm gonna make this right. I'm gonna apologize to you. Like there's just no hesitation, and like I'm curious if he believed that this was Osha and there's some weird past there, or like if he feels like he genuinely he realizes that it's May and genuinely did something wrong the day of that fire that took the family. Like I'm also very curious, like like how much did the Jedi have to do with that? Because like she's hunting down these 4 specific Jedi who were on that planet when that happened. But the
Mm-hmm.
story goes that May set the fire. So like was May framed? Like was something else going on under wraps? Like something feels fishy here. Like something doesn't feel like it
Yeah.
fits, and I'm very curious why. Like she's been hunting these people down, and was Master say his name again, Matthew? I'm sorry,
Torben.
Torvin. Thank you. Was Master Torvin in that
Tor,
meditative state?
I believe
Torva.
it's Torb as in boy, bin.
Torbin. Okay, thank you. Was Master Torben in that state because he felt immense guilt? Like was it, or was he? Did he think he really had achieved some level of like peace? Because those two.
Right.
May was talking with the apothecarist, who I don't think we got a name from him.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, the peace is all fake. They just think they have peace, and so I'm very curious about that
Yeah.
as well. Sorry, I have many questions about the show, but it's just so. Ooh. Makes
Well,
me happy.
especially because you're right. The story we've been told is that May set the fire. I think not necessarily that they'll do it the same way as like a direct reference to Last Jedi, but I think we will get that kind of Rashomon style.
Mm,
We will probably see that event through the eyes of different people. And that part of the idea is that different people remember it in different ways, and that the actual truth is probably somewhere in between. And that one thing that Aaron and I have talked about, I think you were at least on one of these podcasts, I'm not positive, but we know this is coming at the end of the High Republic. And so I don't think anyone needs to know the High Republic books to understand the show, but there's certainly some things the High Republic books have established that I think are helpful. One of which is there's an incident in Phase Two where some really awful information is learned about the Jedi that Yoda and another master at the time, this is about 200 years before the events of this show, 300 years before, Anakin and Luke and all them, they decide to hide. Like Yoda specifically decides not to enter this into the Jedi records at the temple, not to tell anyone about it. And so I think the possibility that the official story of what happened may be kind of a cover up of something that Torben, maybe like Torben had done something truly awful and the rest had helped cover it up, or, they'd all been part of something, or, whatever it might be, feels to me like it's going to be a really important part of the story.
I fully agree with that. And like, I'm curious if it's a cover up or if it's more like, I'm curious, like if maybe the Sith leader was formerly a Jedi. Who could have been, I don't know. There's like I've had so many different like people tell me theories today, and I don't really
Mm-hmm.
know if I have landed on anything myself. I just feel like I want more. I want to know more. And
Yeah.
again, I haven't felt. And like I will say that with Ahsoka, I was waiting for specific moments. Like I was waiting for Hayden Christensen and Anakin to show up. I was waiting for that. For the Obi-Wan, I was waiting for the duel with Darth Vader. Like it felt like the last few shows, outside of Andor. Andor was very unique. I've been waiting for like X thing to happen, and
Mm-hmm.
this show feels very open-ended. Like I literally have no clue what's going to happen next. I know she's going after two more Jedi, but that's it. And I think that
Yeah.
it's like exciting to me.
We're going to have a lot more on that in just 1 second. We're starting the conversation, but we want to hear from you. Send your thoughts, questions, or anything else you want to hear us discuss to feedback@theethicalpanda.com. Or you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok under The Ethical Panda. You can even chat with us on Discord or Facebook. Find those links in the show notes or on our website, theethicalpanda.com. And if you like this content, why not become a member? You get early access to ad-free episodes for all podcasts in the Ethical Panda family, along with bonus content at the end of most episodes, plus member-only episodes. And it's just $5 a month, or $55 for a full year. Sign up at theethicalpanda.com or through the link in the show notes. And now, back to our episode. Welcome back, everyone. Also, apologies to anybody who is watching this on stream. You'll notice that you get to see Alex's wonderful smiling face, but not my own. That's because I am traveling. I've been traveling a bunch the last couple weeks. My laptop doesn't really have the ability to do camera as part of this, but once I'm back in my studio, we will have all of our faces as part of this discussion. So,
You-
I wanted to pick up on what you're saying about theory there, because I very much agree. And are you a big MCU fan?
I am. Well, I am. I've fallen off a little bit with the shows very recently, but
Mm-hmm.
I've watched most, if 95% of the content
So,
that's been released.
back when WandaVision was coming out, did you get caught up in the Mephisto of it all?
A little bit. A little bit.
The podcast community that I was a part of, and I was very involved with, people got really obsessed with this question of, is Mephisto going to be a part of the show? And just every week there was theories and more theories, and what did this mean and what did that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, I feel like a lot of us didn't enjoy the show as much as we could have. And I kind of intentionally pulled away from it and watched a lot of people I know. Like, I think I enjoyed it a lot more than a lot of other people I know, who by the end talked about how disappointed they were because they felt like all these theories had been set up and none of them were paid off. And I had to kind of, be like, you guys kind of did most of this yourself. And I I think you're right. I very much want to know who is the Sith, in part because I want to know to what extent are we honoring the story from Darth Plagueis and that book, which is extended universe, so it's not officially canon, but certainly a lot of stuff from those books have been brought into the canon, or are we going in a totally new direction? But other than that, there isn't a big moment I'm waiting for. And
Yeah.
I think I'm going to try as hard as I can not to get into theories. I think I really want to
Mhm.
just be able to enjoy this show as it is and just take each week as it is without being like, oh, well, maybe this meant that. And so I'm going to kind of wait to see if this thing I think is going to happen happens.
Yeah, and I totally, agree with that. And like you know, like I said, I tried to think of theories, but I couldn't even like come up with anything because it's not like in past, I was especially with Star Wars, I'm notorious for trying to come up with theories on things. Like with Ahsoka, I had theories after every episode. When episode 7 came out in theaters, I wrote down like 3 double space pages or single space pages on my laptop on what I thought was going to happen in the rest of the trilogy. Like I had because I knew the characters, I knew the story, I knew like the vibe of that era, so I could make educated guesses and theories. But like these are currently like, I mean, as someone who hasn't read the High Republic books, I don't know any of these characters at all, and like
Yeah.
I don't at this point I don't even know how the Jedi Order functions. I mean, we saw a youngling literally say, "I see fire spreading everywhere," and I think that if imagine for a minute if young Anakin Skywalker said that in front of Mace Windu, like I mean, Mace Windu would have immediately crucified this poor child because
Mm-hmm.
he's talking Sith talk, but this child says it, and immediately Master Soul is just like, yes, the Force is that it can grow like that, like very like accepting. I actually kind of like I can see how how these Jedi became the later Jedi, but I
Mm-hmm.
like the current Jedi more so far. Like they're like we don't
Yeah.
make rash decisions. We have a constructive conversation. Like, but we also like allow people to be themselves.
Yeah, their attitude seems to be like I was thinking about the thing you mentioned before about how attachments are still very much like frowned upon, but not like 100% cut off. It feels to me like this is an era of alcoholism is bad, but like, yeah, if you have 1 or 2 drinks, okay, but don't let it get out of control versus the total abstinence of um, the of the Clone Wars time. And
mhm.
the thing about fire, first of all, I don't know if you felt this, but I thought it was a really well done misdirect because at first I thought it was a flashback that was actually young May or young
I did too for a second.
Osha
Yeah.
until they established clearly that it wasn't. But even so, one of the things that the High Republic books have done is I feel like really, and this is something actually that Danielle in the Star Wars, who'll probably be on at some point, has really talked about a lot on her TikToks. It feels like it's really recaptured the mysticism of the Force and the
Mhm.
idea that it is something that exists and everyone knows about it, but it's a thing that by definition we don't have language for, and so we try to come up with metaphorical language for it, but everyone's metaphor is going to be different.
Mhm.
And there's a great there are 2 Jedi who feel very pulled towards each other, and they understand the Force in different ways. And it's still one of them sees it kind of like as an ocean, and the other understands it as a song.
Mhm.
And they talk a lot of the time about how when they clash, it's because they can't really understand each other's metaphors. But when they really work well together, it's because of how those 2 different metaphors fit together. And so the idea that someone does see it as fire fits that, in a way that doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh my God, that means you think we're all going to burn to death. That means you're influenced by the Sith or something like that.
Mhm. Mhm. It feels a lot more like the best way I can kind of describe it, I think, from my point of view at least, is that these Jedi that we're seeing in the Acolyte trust in the mystery of the Force and that the Force presents itself in mysterious ways, while the current Jedi, as in like the Jedi of the Skywalker saga, um, really believe more or less in the Force and more in the Jedi's interpretation of the Force and their own order's beliefs. Like it feels much less like
Yeah.
it feels much more disconnected. It's almost actually, it's interesting to me. It feels like Qui-Gon is like almost a unique bridge because he feels a lot more like he would have fit in really well with these
Right.
Jedi of old. And did not. He was an outcast and kind of a quirky one considered among the council
Mm-hmm.
in the current era. So, it's very fun to me to see that like he really feels like the death of Qui-Gon feels actually more symbolic to me because it's like the death of this former, beliefs of the Jedi, and just the stronghold of the current beliefs that we see go on through the Clone
Yeah.
Wars and in that era of the Republic.
And I think it goes all the way into Last Jedi, where when Luke says, he says one of the things that the Jedi did was that their arrogance of thinking they were like that they had like mastery of the Force. And
Mm-hmm.
I try not to use the idea of religion to understand the Jedi too often, but I think it's a metaphor that helps. And that's a thing that I think that can often happen in like sociology of religion that we talk about a lot of like, is the job of the religion to help point towards the divine, whatever that is something else? Or how much does it become like, no, we want people to see the divine in us, and that only through us and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I think that's kind of what Luke is calling out. And I think in some ways, like Luke would want to look back to this time more in terms of what he thinks the Jedi could be. Because a lot of the critiques that I think and that, but I also like that it does seem like, maybe Saul's attachment to his Padawan is a little bit too much. Maybe we are that the events we're seeing now could well be the reason that by the time of Mace and all that, people are just saying, just don't have any attachments. It just gets too muddy and messy. And think about what happened to Saul and all those people back then.
And it's also something I want to touch on quickly is that it's interesting to me that May and Osha are twins because they're both force sensitive beings, and both experienced the same trauma and both believed that the other was dead. But you see how both of them went completely different directions, and what the influences that they surrounded themselves with and how they reacted to it, shows how the Force can react so differently, even in siblings. And it was also, I think, very cool to see a Jedi who walked away from the Order was still immediately like, she wasn't shamed. She was like, it was my choice. The Jedi were like, all right, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You went and became a mechanic and did your own thing, and immediately accepted to like be helpful back on a mission, and like there was no hesitation versus like the Jedi working with Ahsoka was like they had to run up the flagpole. The council had to debate it. Like Mace was all sassy about it, calling her a citizen. Like it was just such a different time.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see that big, and I recognize that like, clearly the general world still sees the Jedi as being oppressive and pompous and too much. And I'm sure we'll see more of that, but they seem a lot more likable to me than the Jedi that we're familiar with.
Mm-hmm. I will say also, and here's a little bit of spoilers for the most recent books of the High Republic, so skip ahead a minute if you don't want to hear that. I am a little curious as to how this fits in the timeline because this is 100 years after those latest books, and the situation is very, very different. As of the last High Republic book we got, there's another one to come out pretty soon. But at the point that book ends, like the galaxy is split down the middle between these two warring factions, one of which really has the Jedi on the run and is kind of kicking Jedi ass. And
Mm-hmm.
so I admit that when like it opened with the words of like we've had centuries of peace, I kind of did some math and was like, that doesn't fit. But okay, maybe something is maybe in the books that I'm reading something will be undone so that everyone forgets about it. I don't know. Um, but I'm not bothered by that. I'm just kind of curious. But even so, I'm saying like this period is still very different than the High Republic books we've seen in terms of the way the Jedi are functioning and things like that.
Yeah.
What else caught your attention about these episodes?
That's a good question. I think that from my first impressions, first of all, some of the visuals, it was interesting because I thought that like some of the visuals were fantastic and some of them looked bad. Like the ship crash looked awful, like bad CGI. I'm sorry, but like I noticed that like some of I think they did some combination like CGI practical effects on some things, and they looked fantastic. I mean, like the practical effects for Pip the droid, for the Trade Federation folks, like all that looked like really crisp and fresh and cool. And like again, like it's cool to see. Like for me, like it's such a nerdy little thing, but like just seeing how the Trade Federation was operating, still kind of under the table, sleazy, 100 years earlier, like just the tiniest little nugget. Doesn't have anything to do with the story. Not characters we're familiar with. Like, we're not seeing Newt Gunray, but we're seeing a familiar species, a familiar organization, and it's fun to see them 100 years ago. It was fun to see like the temple gold plated and like shiny, and I don't know. It just kind of had this cool little zip to it all.
I just two quick things on that. One more humorous, one serious.
Mm.
The first being, I did think it was fun that once again we see people working under incredibly unsafe working conditions in this world, which happens all the time. And this time, her person's name was literally OSHA. For those
Yeah.
who don't know, OSHA is the American organization that is supposed to handle workplace safety, and we've often said that like the Death Star needed OSHA to come in and insist on like railings on the walkways and stuff like that. But more seriously, the Neomodians, and this is something that Riki and I, my other co-host, have talked about a good deal. The Neomodians were incredibly racist, very like Japanese, Asian, but especially Japanese kind of stereotype in the language they used. And here they sounded like they had an alien accent that sounded similar, but it was not the kind of like super exaggerated.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I am white. I want to hear what Asian creators, especially Japanese creators and Japanese American creators, but also any Asian creators have to say about it. And if they feel differently, then I will certainly defer to that. But from what I've seen online so far, because I did see one or two others supporting the same idea, it felt like they really kind of adjusted and decided to tone that down a lot in a way that I really liked.
I agree. I've had the same exact thought as I was watching it. It felt far less problematic to me. And again, I mean, I'm also, I'm Middle Eastern American. Like I defer as well, but I did feel like it was much more tastefully done than it has been in the past, and still got very much the point across, and could have been done this way originally and been just as good.
Yeah.
Probably better, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's true. This doesn't mean I need to see more Gungans and them not have quite the same patois accent. I'm kind of done with them in general, but
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see.
And then the last thing I kind of just wanted to bring up quickly is I don't have theories, but the brief moment we saw this Sith master, whatever he is, whoever he is, it gave off very like, here's a guy in a mask, very Kylo Ren, Darth Vader-esque, vibes. Like, but it's obviously pre all these guys. I don't know why, the mask is just to hide his identity or what the deal is. But it's interesting to me because like he has a red lightsaber, so clearly he has been trained. It's for our listeners might not know, like in order to attain a red lightsaber, it's not just like finding a red kyber crystal. You have to pour your hate and anger into the crystal through the Force to basically like turn it to the dark side, because kyber crystals are naturally like attuned to the light side. And so he clearly has been trained to some level, has to have some knowledge or access to Sith holocrons, Sith tech, Sith temple, something. So I'm very curious to see where that goes. But he was very menacing, and like the voice was just cold. But what really struck me was what he said, in that like the Acolyte kills without a weapon. He's very like harping on this, like that's very not the Sith we know. The Sith we know are very aggressive, like do murder with weapons, murder in any way possible, like achieve their goal no matter what. But this guy has very specific ideals, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that, and this is kind of related. I really liked the fact that so far May doesn't have a lightsaber, and that it's clearly something that like she has to work towards. And this whole thing of like you have to learn how to kill with different weapons, and so she has to kill with a knife. In what I thought was a really kind of badass way of playing specifically upon the Jedi's empathy and their desire to, try to rescue others at times at the expense of themselves. And the way she took advantage of that was so brilliant. And then to kill someone else literally without a weapon, it really makes me feel like there's a real reverence for this idea of she's not just Darth May right now. This is a real, like, we're starting on these different ideas, and she's not even maybe a full Sith yet. She is in training, and she has to prove herself. And the idea that, like, because we think of like you need a red lightsaber to kill a Jedi with a green lightsaber, and the idea that you have to kill numerous Jedi to prove that you're ready for a red lightsaber, like that's.
I mean, yeah, he doesn't even call her a Padawan. He calls her like an acolyte, like a follower, basically. Like I feel like to me, like an acolyte would be like a step below a Padawan. Like he's like, you have to prove yourself, and like you said, I mean, like after she kills the Jedi Master what's her name? Jedi Master Indara.
Mm-hmm.
She like goes to kill the bartender and like probably retroact like from a standpoint should have to prevent her like identity from being revealed, but like sees
Mm-hmm.
the child and chooses to let him live. But that's very not like, I mean, we just saw in Tales of the Empire like absolutely merciless killing by the Inquisitors. Like it's not the typical dark side we know where you just kill to cover your ass, killed just to kill.
Right.
Like it was like there was a moment of compassion, which makes me feel like May's not fully gone. We saw a lot of fear in her. Every time she said, like, attack me with all your might or whatever, like there was fear in her voice, very
Yeah.
clear fear. Um, and so, like, to me, like this Sith master, whoever he is playing on that fear, playing on her past anger and trauma. And I'm very curious to see like what Osha's role is, if she's able to bring her sister back, like if they have to confront each other, confront this dark side user, like there's
Mm-hmm.
so many questions I have, and I don't need answers right this second, but I'm excited to learn them.
I'll just say one other thing about that, and this can be kind of a wrap up and a last wrap up stuff you want to have. We're going to try and keep this episode kind of short. I love that from the very beginning, they made very clear that these are twins, that these are two distinctly different beings.
Mm.
Because at first, with a little moment of her kind of talking to May in her head, Mary, my partner, we were watching together, and we both kind of wondered, like, is this going to be a DID, like dissociative identity disorder
I had
kind
the
of
same
thing?
thought. Same thought.
Which is the it's the much more accurate term for what used to be called like multiple personality disorder or something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yep.
And frankly, I am not an expert in that by any means, but I certainly know enough about it to know that Hollywood often gets it very, very wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that often it's used as kind of an excuse for this is why a person is like, oh, they're so bad. And I just didn't want that. And so I was really glad to be like, nope, these are just two different people. And that's really awesome.
I had the exact same. Wow, Matt and I are fully on the same page. So y'all really take this episode in. But I like had the exact same thought of like it to me. I was like, wow, is she gonna? Is this like they did that on purpose. Like like they made her crewmate say like, where were you last night? And like she doesn't say where she was, and like it makes you think like, is she undercover? Is she lying to herself? Does she have dissociative identity disorder? Like, did her trauma of the past make her break? And like, even like when she crashed, like she sees her sister, and I'm like, is this a moment where like she disappears into this other, into her sister's persona or like this dark side persona? But
Yeah.
I agree. Like, I think it's actually more interesting to have, these twins who went different directions.
Right.
And I don't know, it's also cool because you get to see this one actress perform two very different characters, and she's performing them both very well, like very well. I am like really impressed by her acting so far, and I'm excited to see like how she continues with that.
Yeah, I feel very much the same way. And it's interesting. I hadn't even thought of this till now, but like think about how you're not supposed to have attachments, and part of that is you're supposed to cut off all connections to then you're both taken to this temple at the same time. Like, how is that not an attachment? Or do they separate twins and try to raise them separately? Like that's a whole other area of questions that now I really want to see them explore. So
yeah. And real quick, I just want to say the last thing here is just we saw that actually. Aaron and I talked about this. If you listen to last week's episode, in that Old Republic video game, like cinematic trailers, which is not, I don't know if it's actually considered canon or not. I don't think it necessarily is, but we see like the Jedi separating siblings who both have force sensitivity, and like how they would, and like bringing commentary in like how they would take one and not the other, and how that can affect the psyche of both, and
wow,
the distrust that could exist there. And it's really interesting because I've always wanted an exploration of that, because I've always thought to myself that thing is like, I don't, Matthew, do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I do. A
So
younger
like,
sister.
what can you imagine like if you two were like children together growing up, and then suddenly a Jedi Master comes, they trains you both, and they take your sister away from you, and they say you're not worthy, your sister is. So not only are you told you're not good enough, but then your built-in sibling and best friend, or your sister is taken from you now, and like your sister probably is then taken away, And it's like, well, I miss my, sibling. I miss my person. And it's just crazy to think like how Jedi have destroyed families like that, and like just thought it was the will of the Force when they could have taken both, or they could have left them both alone. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see that explored, and the obviously, like, May was presumed dead, but the implication I've at least understood it is that Osha was already a Padawan, or being at least touted to enter the order at this point. But maybe not. Maybe Soul just, like, the fire happened and Soul just took her in because he saw something in that moment. But it is very interesting to me.
Yeah, I think it's all true. It's
Yeah.
interesting to me. What is interesting to you all, listeners? We want to know what you think. Let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your theories. We're not going to go too deep on them, but someone hear them if you've got them. What do you like? What do you not like? Send it all to us. Send us feedback. TheEthicalPanda.com. It has all the information. The show notes has all the information. Please let us know what you think. Please keep listening. Please share this with your friends. And most importantly, we have spoken. Superhero Ethics is an Ethical Panda podcast, part of the True Story FM network. If you enjoyed the show, please share it and leave a rating or review in your podcast app if possible. The best way to support us is by becoming a member. Find info and social links in the show notes. Thanks for listening.